I'm Lisa Senecal.
And I'm Maya May, and tonight we're talking to congressional candidate Christy Smith about flipping House seats. We're Speaking starts now. I always want to jam out to that.
I know.
Yeah.
Maya, there are 20 days until the election. And I have to tell you, every time I say that to someone, I want to scream there are 20 days until the election.
Stay focused, people.
Look at a lot of states, I've already voted. I had my mail-in ballot delivered to me, filled it out more than a week ago. It was in, done, very easy. Everybody
I haven't
do it when you get a chance. Because early and in-person voting has started in a lot of places, and it started in Georgia. And wow, have people been coming out to vote early? They're up 85% over the 2018 midterms, and the 2018 midterms was a huge turnout. So
it's a good sign.
It's a good sign. Yeah, the early vote leans usually more Dems. So fingers crossed that that's what's happening again now. But pro-democracy forces, everybody out there, voters, you can't get complacent. Every election, we have a choice to either let the future be something that just kind of happens to us, or we get to decide what the future is going to be and shape it by voting. So please make sure you get out to vote and you get other people out to vote. The critical races around the country are incredibly tight. There are so many that are just within the margin of error. And those races are going to have a huge impact on personal freedom, our bodies, literally the fate of not just our democracy, but there are implications for democracies all around the globe.
Yeah. And you're right when you say those races are tight. Like how tight? Like those jeans that I've still been trying to get into.
I was going to say, like my skinny jeans tight.
Yeah, exactly. That's how tight, y'all. And this morning, tonight's guest said on Twitter, democracy is a decision. And I was like, yes, damn right it is. It's like a choose your own adventure book. And you can flip a seat blue and see where, like in America, where we can all thrive. Or we can follow the GOP's playbook, which is basically they're writing up legislation working to take away all of our rights, the right to choose, the right to public education, the right to Social Security that you paid into, the right to make your own medical decisions, the right to marry who you love. All of it is in jeopardy. And so voting is a right. And if we waive that right, we just wave goodbye to democracy. So if you're watching, we know you're going to vote, but our work is actually making sure that this message, fighting for democracy, gets shared far and wide to, beyond the people who are just watching right now. So please hit that share button. I'm going to be like one of those YouTubers right now. Hit that like button, send it to everybody, copy the link, drop it in your group chat, and make sure people are voting and early voting and getting involved with the process, because it's going to take all of us.
It is going to take all of us. We're so excited to have our guest tonight because she is an actual real life candidate. She is a former assemblywoman, state assemblywoman, a school board member. So important, as we have seen in the past year or so, school boards. She's an education activist and a mom who is in a rematch battle with election denier is education denier too, actually.
I was going to say, it
kind of works. Yeah. Mike Garcia. But this time, it's for the newly formed 27th Congressional District in California. And she has a real shot at flipping this seat blue. And it is in a traditionally red area of the state. So welcome, Christy Smith, to We're Speaking. We are thrilled to have you here.
Oh, it's exciting to be here. Thank you both.
Yes, excellent. So we're incredibly glad to have you on the show because you are a powerful voice, poised to potentially flip a seat in California, where I'm at as well. You're not an extremist. You believe in democracy, free and fair elections. You don't want the government to have more say in reproductive medical care than doctors. You're not the gun lobby. What's it like having a GOP opponent who's your total opposite and having it be a really tight race?
Yeah, I mean, it has definitely been crazy since we first went head to head in 2020. The member of Congress in this seat had been a Democrat, Katie Hill, and when she resigned, I stepped in to try to save the seat, but Mike Garcia had already been running for a year. But just based on how he was reacting in the 2020 cycle, we knew he was very highly Trump aligned, that he, had people around him who were part of the QAnon crowd. And he really hasn't retreated from that. And where we've seen other Republicans kind of in the state realize that they are in a bluer state and need to vote and act accordingly, my opponent has stayed right there in the extreme right lane. And it's meant really bad outcomes, frankly, for our district when he's voted against just kind of common sense bipartisan legislation like the infrastructure bill, like the community safety bill. It says to our voters, he really is not in line with where their politics are. So as crazy of a ride as it's been, because we are so very different in our politics, I do think the voters are wise to where he is now. And I would say at least 333 of them have a pretty good case of buyer's remorse. So this is going to be a different outcome this cycle.
That is fantastic to hear. And it's a different district than it was. You've had changes
Absolutely.
there. So tell us how the district has changed and what that might mean for the outcome.
Yeah, so before redistricting and in the 2020 cycle, this district included Simi Valley, which is a Republican stronghold. It's the home of the Reagan Library, right? So a lot of proud, deeply entrenched Republicans there who in the last cycle voted at a really high rate. They approached 90% turnout for their Republicans in the last cycle. But that is no longer part of the district. So this is now an all Los Angeles County district, includes a pretty sizable piece of the city of Los Angeles itself, and then the Santa Clarita and Antelope Valleys, which have over time trended more blue like the rest of LA County. So it's a very different race this cycle, just based on the district itself.
And around the country, we've been seeing registration numbers shift, the demographic of registration numbers shift. A lot of Democrat women who, are getting involved. Are you seeing that in your district?
Absolutely. That has been a really interesting shift, and particularly for young women and young women's activism. The other thing that's been interesting for me, though, as someone who's lived here, all of my adult life and most of my young life, is to see the number of people leaving the Republican Party. People who have been my neighbors and friends for years who in this moment are just like, I can't have that identifier anymore. And so they've kind of moved into that decline to state category. And I think are going to vote according, to principle and not so much party anymore, which is reassuring for us, for sure.
Are you also seeing or getting the sense that there are people who have not left the party, aren't comfortable letting everybody know that they, their circle of friends, family, whatever, that they're leaving the Republican Party, but that they're not comfortable voting Republican anymore, even though they're still declared or registered as a Republican, especially because of Roe?
It's a really good question. I don't know, the kind of conversations they're having with friends and family, but I know that at every public event I've had a handful of Republicans come up and say, I've been a lifelong Republican, but based either on what happened around January 6th and the insurrection and, election deniers, or based on Roe, or based on climate, interestingly enough, which tends to be a really bipartisan issue here, that they can't vote with Republicans until they're kind of in a better and a more realistic headspace around all of that. So we definitely know that our message is getting through to Republicans as well, and some are turning away from the GOP.
Yeah, I'm hoping that's going to be the big surprise come November 8th when we're starting to tally all of this, because it's like people don't want to, there's peer pressure. So they don't necessarily want to tell their friends and family that they're deciding to vote Democrat. But they had your district had an up close seat to the election denial, because Mike Garcia basically, he voted against certifying the results of two of the states. I think it was Pennsylvania and Arizona. And so they've had a kind of like this upfront seat at somebody who is denying the results of an election, denying democracy. And in 2020, you were only 300 votes away from beating him in a special election. What were your takeaways from that race?
I love this question because it's so important and it's so fundamental to the difference between the two of us. It's so cynical of him to have embraced that lie and then just ridden it all the way, for the full 2 years of his term. Because when it came down to it, we were one of the last races decided in the country. And in the two different counties that were in the district at the time, Ventura County had a Republican elected elections official, and LA County had an appointed nonpartisan election official. But his campaign and mine, we both had observers present while all those last votes were being counted. We had attorneys present while all those last votes were being counted. Everything was as above board as one would hope as an American who wants to feel solid and secure in their vote really being, honored and cherished. And, the fact that he continued then to go on OAN and Newsmax and other places, and not only at the federal level with Biden's race, but with our own race, cast aspersions on the process and try to sow doubt where there absolutely was no room for doubt at all. In fact, volunteers that went down for my campaign said it was the most gratifying thing that they had ever done in reassuring their own belief in our democratic institutions, that the way things were handled, the lengths that both counties went to make sure that a person's ballot could be cured if it had been ripped, or, somehow the markings weren't accurate or they were unsure. They really made every effort to reach out to have that vote counted. So again, it's just this really cynical and frankly, at this point, dangerous move on behalf of the GOP, that in the absence of a real agenda, a real platform for America, that they're going to change the rules of the game to accommodate them staying in power. And I hope that, we know in our district that voters who are motivated by this, they are almost immovable on the issue. There's nothing really that persuades them away from it. We know they're going to vote with us. And I hope that as more people, are making the selection on their ballot, they incorporate that into the many issues that they're deciding on, because it is fundamentally important to how we move forward as a country.
I'm sure you would have loved to have had that discussion directly with Mike Garcia, but he has been unable to muster the courage to debate you.
Right.
Beyond me being flippant and saying he's not brave enough to do it, what do you think the reasoning is behind that? Is it that he doesn't want to have to stand behind some of these positions that he has?
Yeah, behind positions that he has that are dangerous for the country, that roll back freedoms and protections that people in this country have enjoyed for decades and fought hard for. The fact that everything that he and the NRCC and the CLF are saying about me is a lie, that's proven with public documentation. Like, you're not going to show up to a debate if you can be proven and called out as a liar within the first 5 minutes, which would be exactly my plan. But again, cynical and insidious. How dare anyone put themselves forward to be a leader in the United States at this crucial moment if you're not even willing to put forward a campaign that's based on truth? I hope people are watching.
Yeah. Christy, I have to say, I'm listening to you and I'm like, this is a reasonable person who needs to be a leader in our country. And then I look at the GOP candidates that are on the ballot and I'm like, it's like night and day. Like, anybody should be able to see it. And your race reflects a lot of what's happening in the country right now, like election denial, reproductive rights, border hysteria. And GOP candidates, they only have complaints, no solutions. So what can Democratic candidates in other districts learn from following your race?
I think be bold about telling the truth. Really lean into the moment and don't let the Republicans set the frame. I think that's what we have done as a party for a really long time. They kind of come out with their key sets of issues. They hammer it away. They have their daily talking points. They are relentless in staying on message. And we just have to break the frame. I mean, that's what our governor, Gavin Newsom, has been so wonderful about doing lately on everything from gas prices, reproductive freedom, gun violence. And, the results speak for themselves when you're talking about red states and red controlled communities where the gun laws are really, really lax. That's where you're seeing the highest rates of violent crime. So I think people just really need to be bold in truth telling, try to speak over the noise, try to get directly to the public instead of counting on the media to deliver messaging for you, because now, unfortunately, not all media is fact checking. And, stay brave.
What you just described is such a perennial source of great frustration for Democrats, that the Republicans are, even if their message is based on lies and conspiracy theories and the rest of it, they're consistent and they beat the same drum. They're so good with their talking points. Do you think there's enough of that happening in your race at this point? And yes, Governor Newsom has been doing incredible work on the state and national stage. But do you think that's getting through yet? Because the Republicans are still, they've got crime that they're beating on. They've got, left wing is, or people on the left are far too extreme for the country. And
litter boxes.
Yeah. So
yeah. I mean, look, we have not only a crisis of confidence in our government because how we've run our campaign for these many cycles now, where Americans are just kind of subjected to this constant volley of noise that isn't really issue based. And then sadly, we have a media that's driven by ratings. They've got to make money. They've got to stay on the air. But in doing that, they're very often driven to what gets clicks instead of what's been fact checked. And I've tweeted about this a couple of times, the notion of media and their role as the fourth estate should not be to find balance where no balance exists. It should be on reporting the truth, right? And so when you're talking about fascism, when you're talking about racism, rolling back women's reproductive freedom decades, there is no balance that exists there. There is only one set of facts and the truth. And so again, it's incumbent on campaigns like mine to lean into the truth, to speak to voters directly and hopefully penetrate what is a really noisy midterm election space right now.
I hope the people watching at home who were not familiar with you before are right now just sending messages to friends like, oh my God, you got to see this in California. She is just on fire, speaking so much truth right now. This is exactly the kind of energy we need. Gen Z also bringing the kind of energy that we need. They're consistently hammering out the same messaging. And this is what I've been noticing from them, voter turnout. And they're letting people know you're going to see more voter turnout from Gen Z than you've seen in elections past, and they keep hammering it over and over and over again. Do you think Gen Z is kind of the key to figuring out how to get our way out of this chaos?
Yeah, well, first of all, big shout out to Gen Z and all of their activist groups that are on the ground that have been, since gun violence really has gripped our country for the last several years, because that is really one of the things that primarily has motivated them, that along with climate. And when I started this election season, what was really breaking my heart as a mom and someone who's been in the field of education for a long time was kind of the despair that we were seeing among young people. And just in the last several months, with the successes of the Biden administration, a little bit of student debt relief, some action on climate, some action on protections for them and the people they care about, to see them now really embracing this moment and coming into their own as a generation where in districts like mine across this country, the 18 to 30-year-old voting demographic will own this race. They control these races if they choose to turn out and vote. They are the swing electorate now, given their size. It's really great. And I'm honored to have, Gen Z groups that have endorsed me in this race. And I welcome all of that activism because their heart and their head is in the right place. And they're fighting for a future of this country that they're going to inherit that'll be the most diverse in America's lifetime, but with the greatest set of challenges. And they absolutely deserve to have a seat at the table deciding how we move forward.
And they're so well informed. They're so much better informed than I was at that age. And I'm sure my folks, when they were young voters, they understand the issues. They have strong, really well-formed ideas on the issues, but across both Democrats and Republicans in Gen Z, they at least agree largely on what the issues are. They seem to have, they want to have the kind of deep, get into the weeds conversations that Democrats usually have, which is what takes them off message. And do you think in the future with Gen Z leading, we can envision a time when we really are tackling real issues together, both parties, having those good intellectual debates about how to fix stuff?
Yeah, I hope so. And that's the role and the challenge for people like me who are wanting to step into these leadership roles right now And I don't intend to do this forever. You know, as soon as there's a young person in my district ready to step up and has what it takes to win a congressional seat, I will gladly step aside. But we need to be providing them the toolkit. We need a media that functions as the fourth estate, that does report facts as opposed to opinion and producing clickbait. We need to allow them opportunities to have meaningful conversations in the public square about race, gender, sexuality, equality, economic justice, labor protections, all of the things that matter to people on the right and the left. Everyone has a personal life, right? Everyone needs to have equal access to economic opportunity. And right now, the way that we have gone about our politics, Citizens United decision being a big part of it, we are effectively shutting down meaningful conversations. And we need to get back to a place where there is a right and a left. It is important to have opposition in our process. That is how we get the best public policy results, actually, is by having a thoughtful opposition. But we cannot have an opposition that exists solely to co-opt and possess power. It has to be working towards meaningful policy improvements that move the country forward and don't deny anybody their rights and protections and freedoms that have been fought for over a really long time, right?
I love hearing what you're saying about conversation. It's one of those things that's like so important to me for understanding and empathy. When you are having these conversations with voters, is it resonating? Are they also wanting to get back to the issues? And in particular, like the Republican voters, the former Republican voters who are coming to you and saying, hey, we don't like this.
You know, it has been interesting to me. So we've done a lot of public events, but I've had 2 larger scale town halls. And in both, by far, the largest applause line and the most interaction and engagement I got was when I talked about the need to get our communities knitted back together, for people to be able to go out and grab their mail without having to worry about what kind of flag was flying on their neighbor's house, or that it might be an uncomfortable encounter. And by and large, people are just ready for a moment where there is some normalcy. There's a return to decency, where our politics is not so ugly that it's pushing people away. And I think that's fundamentally where we are, you know, when we're hearkening back to real harder days. You know, recently when we celebrated the 9/11 memorial again, and people thought, oh, wow, you know, wasn't that so great how we all came together in that moment? The nostalgia, not so much for an era where people were marginalized and left out and didn't have equal rights, but a nostalgia for an America where at the end of the day, we were all rowing in the same direction for Team America, right? And putting the needs and interests of everybody ahead of, you know, any one person's need for power. So I think people are ready just for a return to decency.
I think we have those moments. Unfortunately, they're usually around tragedy. You know, when Florida was struck by the hurricane, or when Puerto Rico was, all of a sudden, you know, a lot of that partisan stuff, even coming out of Ron DeSantis, who is as partisan as you can possibly get, suddenly, you know, there's a more conciliatory tone, in part because he needed something.
I was going to say, I don't buy it. But
yeah, okay. but among people who actually lived in Florida, the political stuff doesn't mean anything when your neighbors are trapped on the second floor of their home and they need to get out. So how do we start peeling some of that anger, that fear that we do have of, like, going out to the mailbox and ending up bumping into the person across the street who has the Confederate flag hanging off their house? How do we get back to a place where we can?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, extend kindness. True story. One of my campaign offices is located next to a guns and ammo store. And that owner and I probably have a pretty different set of policy opinions on where we should be with respect to guns in this country. But every morning when I walk in and he's outside having his cigar, I say, hello, how's it going? How's your day going? And after several weeks of this, he was out front last week, and he just said, hey, I just want to stop you before you go in. My security team was doing a walk the perimeter. They noticed your back door was open. I went and checked it out. I wasn't able to get it to close. Let me stand here and wait while you and your team go in. I just want to make sure you're okay.
Wow.
Common decency, kindness, decency, respect for one another as humans, as neighbors, as fellow Americans. We'll be able to do it. We'll be able to right this ship and bring people back together, but it's going to take a commitment of those of us who put that as a top priority.
I am so grateful for that vision of what the future could look like. And I also I'm known for being an optimistic person. And so I hesitate to ask this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway, because I like to end on a hopeful note. But I do think it's important for us to address what a world would look like if Mike Garcia and his other people who are, QAnon and Trump aligned. I think it's important for us to have that in our minds so that we can get over the need to, so when we need to have these important conversations, we do have them. So for your district, how would life change? What would life be like if the Republicans were to take the House, take the Senate, take our sanity, as I said in our
Sure. Yeah, I mean, look, my opponent, as draconian as his views are on women's reproductive freedom, has said, well, California will be okay because it's state by state. But at the same time, he's a co-author of what is the roadmap for their national abortion ban. And they also have proposed a national ban on access to contraception. These are people who have very extremist views when it comes to guarding and protecting freedoms that we have all had since Roe was decided. So that's one. They have also said the quiet part out loud now when it comes to Medicare and Social Security. These are programs they want to end within their lifetimes, within our lifetimes, which would be devastating to current generations of seniors and future generations of retirees who have counted on that as part of their financial planning. They have no intention of doing anything on climate. So we will be leaving our kids an uninhabitable planet with dirty air, dirty water, and unreasonable temperatures that lead to very expensive climate catastrophe across the globe for probably years to come. So it is not without significant warning that we have to say to people, they are telling you who they are. Believe them. The fact that some have tried to retreat in these last few weeks, last few days, when they prove out, the polling doesn't match where their extremism is, believe who they are. And when they say that they have no interest in going back to the protections of the 1965 Voting Rights Act that kept marginalized communities safe to make sure that everyone had access to the right to vote, when they say that they have, a vested interest in making sure that state officials can overturn the results of federal elections, they're saying this right in front of us. Believe them, because it's where they're going.
Yep, it sure is. Christy,
we can't let them take them with them. We can't let them take us with them. Is what I wanted to say.
Right? No, they right.
I was just I literally went into a hole of oh God, that is what they're doing. But sometimes it takes hearing it to kind of create that visceral reaction. So sorry, Lisa, go ahead.
No, it puts into focus why having candidates like Christy on the ballot, the California Congressional 27th District is so lucky to have you putting yourself forward. We need more people like you willing to do it, polling does not determine deeply held beliefs for you. They're clearly what they are, and they're going to be that, whatever the polls say. So thank you for being with us. Thank you for putting your name forward and doing the work to help us save democracy.
Yeah, well, thank you both for shining a light on it. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Christy. All right, this is what I need everybody to do. I need somebody to watch a clip of one of those candidates like Tudor Dixon in Michigan, and then look at a clip of Christy Smith, and then take those clips and send them to your friends and family who somehow think that it's better to choose somebody like a Tudor Dixon or somebody like a Herschel Walker, when there are reasonable, good people who care about the country and their constituents who are running. Do that. Take one of these crazy clips, take a decent clip, show them together. We need more Christy Smiths in the world. We do.
Yeah, we do. There was a time when people could say, it doesn't really matter who's in office. They're just gradations on the gray scale, and things don't change dramatically. Things are going to change dramatically. If Democrats lose the House, things are going to change dramatically for people in the United States, for people in the Ukraine, because the House is going to cut off the money that we and the defensive equipment that we have been sending them. That is helping them not be slaughtered by a war criminal. But
and you think Putin's going to stop at Ukraine? Like, that's the thing. It's like people who don't understand that geopolitics affects us as well. Like,
well, and all you have to do, like anybody who has ever been in a really unhealthy relationship, an abusive relationship or a controlling relationship, and you think, well, if I just do this, if I just give into that, if I just behave this way, then this person's going to treat me better. And everybody who's been in those relationships know that doesn't work. That's that's Putin. He is an abuser, and you are not going to appease your way out of the ill graces of a war criminal. That's just not how this guy operates. But for our own democracy, we have to make sure that we keep control of the House and the Senate, and then again in 2024, the presidency, because these people truly are looking to end democracy, the American experiment, as we know it and as we've lived it. The progress that we've made, although it is often far too slow, it still has been happening. And they really do want to not just take us back decades, they want to take us back centuries.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they absolutely do. And so voting, y'all, that's how we stop this. And so like we said up top, please share this content, let your friends and family know what's at stake, so that they do actually go out to vote. Nobody can be complacent in this election cycle, or any election cycle for that matter, because democracy only works if we do. So we appreciate you spending time with us tonight. We appreciate the support that you give to the Lincoln Project. You can donate at lincolnproject.us. You can also join the union, which has so many organizations working on the ground in states in critical races. So really important, if you have any kind of skill set whatsoever, even if it's just picking up the phone and phone banking, I can guarantee you there is a union organization that needs your help. So please go ahead and sign up there.
Yep. Tomorrow night at 8 p.m., Maya and I are going to be talking with a couple of those organizations who are putting in the work in Arizona. So please join us at 8 p.m. Eastern time. And before that, warm up with Tara and Rick on the breakdown at 7 p.m. Eastern. They will be back. And oh God, do we need to look at? No, we don't have to look at, I was going to say we're going to look at last week in the Republican Party, but we're not going to. No. We have a new ad from the Lincoln Project called 1849 that we're going to leave you with tonight. And we'll see you guys tomorrow night.
See you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
1849, Wisconsin. Only white men could vote. Abortions were illegal, even for rape or incest. A lot has changed since 1849. But Tim Michaels says,
my position is an exact mirror of the 1849 law.
Once Roe v. Wade protected women from extremists like Tim Michaels. But now, if Tim Michaels is governor, he can take Wisconsin back to 1849. Michaels is a radical, out of step with Wisconsin. He still claims Donald Trump won Wisconsin and should be president.
We should not even be having this conversation 21 months after the election.
If he's governor, he'll bring Trump chaos to Wisconsin. The 2024 election will be a nightmare. 4 years of radical rule.
We are going to take this country back.
Does that sound like the Wisconsin we love?
The Lincoln Project paid